in my opinion. But anyways, so on to the report. I just want to thank Lance Hosey and the COTE Advisory Group and the American Institute of Architects for allowing me to present this to you. I will be presenting this next week at the AIA National Conference, so you all get kind of a sneak preview of what it is that we'll be discussing next week. So today, just to kind of give a brief overview, I'm going to talk about the COTE Top 10 Awards, for those of you who are not familiar with what they are. I'll be discussing lessons from the leading edge, which was the report just previous to this one, the habits of high-performance firms, top 10 lessons from high-performance firms, and the top 10 lessons for any firm. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a background as to how it was that the COTE Awards began. So COTE stands for Committee on the Environment, and it was created in 1997 as a platform for discussion for sustainability. Up until this point, most of the AIA awards had been focused mostly on aesthetic. So they wanted to have a way to sort of promote and encourage sustainability in architecture, but also give very distinct parameters for what sustainability should be. Not just energy or not just performance, but also looking at things like community, looking at water, ecology, wellness, and so forth. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a background about the habits of high-performance firms, in 2016, the year previous, the AIA released Lessons from the Leading Edge, and this was a report that was authored by Lance Hosey of Harley, Ellis, and Devereaux. And what they did is they went back and looked at almost 20 years of data. They had about 186 different entries for the COTE submissions, and they were sitting on all this data, and they said, okay, what can we learn now that we're at our 20th anniversary from it? So they looked at things, building type, and I'm sure they've been obscured slightly by the sun, but it's still a Brit. So they looked at the building type, like what types of projects were winning. Were they residential? Were they commercial? Were they retail? What are the types of projects that are winning? And then after that, they looked at things like location. Where are these firms winning, right? Are they all in California? Which, as you can see here, there's a 41 wins there. Hawaii has one, just so you can know. They also looked at the number of wins, multiple firm winners. They looked at the types of design strategies that were being implemented in the actual design. So they looked at, for example, they found that almost 80% of all of the COTE winners had used orientation. That's a shocker, I'm sure, for many of you. But they had used orientation as a design strategy in their designs, and fenestration, followed by shading, passive ventilation, massing, vegetation, and thermal mass. And so all of these things were included in that initial report, Lessons from the Leading Edge. And they looked at energy and the potable water. And that basically led to the report that I'm going to discuss today. So since 2008, the Committee on the Environment assembles. They have an advisory group that rotates out every year, and they select one scholar. Last year, I was selected as the COTE Scholar for 2016, and they needed somebody who would be able to go to the firms and interview the top COTE winners to find out what it is that they were doing that made them so successful. So that's this report here, which all of you can access online via PDF if you'd like. It's available for free online if you want the full PDF information on that. So basically what they did in the Lessons from the Leading Edge was they looked at who is winning these awards. So they looked at the list to see who the multiple firm winners were. There was something like, I can't remember, something like 26 firms that had won multiple COTE awards. And of that list, they basically stratified it here. So you see at the very top, Lake Flato here at 10 wins, Letty Madam and Stacy, followed by 8 and Miller Hull, and so forth. And this is basically the top 10 firms that were going to be analyzed based on the number of wins. So they wanted to pick firms that were had a mix of firm size and also geographic location to try to figure out what it was that these firms were doing that made them so successful. So what I found of particular interest with that first list, if you look back, yes, of course, these are the 10 high-performance firms, but what I found interesting was collectively 63 COTE Top 10 awards, 7 of them won Firm of the Year award. That's completely dependent from sustainability. So to me, that 7 out of 10 of the firms would strongly suggest that these firms excel in both design and sustainability, which means they are committed equally to the aesthetic and to sustainability. So this is just to kind of give you a background of how the report was compiled. I started out with the firm visits in San Antonio, Texas with Lake Flato, followed by Siegel and Strain in San Francisco, Letty Madam and Stacy Architects, EHDD. Then from there, I traveled to Los Angeles to go visit Brooks Scarpa. From there, I traveled to Kansas City to go visit BNIM, followed by Miller Hull in Seattle, followed by Portland, which I visited Sarah, and finally the last firm visit, which was Kieran Timberlake in Philadelphia. And basically, what they were trying to achieve there was trying to get a feel, sort of take the pulse of what it was these firms were doing. Obviously, it would have been a lot more cost-effective, probably in time saving, to just send hard copy surveys. But it's difficult to gauge what makes a firm successful by filling out a hard copy survey. So they really wanted somebody to be able to go, sit in, observe their design, trying to figure out how they operate, what are their high in order to compile this report. And the intention was that this report would be shared with the industry at large so that others could learn from what it was that these firms were doing. So this is Lake Flato. For the sake of this presentation, I'm going to dedicate 1 full minute for these firms, which is, devastatingly difficult, but I will do my best. But basically, Lake Flato is, located here in San Antonio, Texas. So they were the first firm that I visit, and they have 10 COTE wins. As you can see, multiple wins in the same year, even twice in 2006, twice in 2016. Lake Flato is known for their regionalist architecture and using shading and natural daylight and ventilation strategies. But for me, my sort of takeaway from Flato was they do an excellent job of integrating their sustainability team in every single aspect of their projects. So they have their sustainability team right now, which consists of Heather Holdridge and Corey Squire and Adam, who is here representing Lake Flato. Thank you. And so they basically on the forefront of design. They are design meeting at each critical phase to ensure that these are being met. Yes.
I think I may change the battery in your mic.
Okay.
Sorry. I keep talking.
Many of the projects that they do, they focus on the design ideas. Sorry. They focus their design strategy on design details and the materials. Because most of what they do is low-income housing, they have to stretch their dollar and put their best face forward by putting all the best materials and all the best design details in the front of the building where they're most likely to be seen. So to me, they're prime proof that you can achieve sustainability on a low budget, that sustainability does not cost more money and does not have a higher price tag. This is Miller Hull. They are in Seattle, Washington, and they have 7 wins. So they have a really strong connection with their community in Washington, and they're super well integrated within academia and also with the local and state organizations. And it's partnership and stewardship, in my opinion, are a large part of their success because they are so involved in the community, because they are so invested. They really take the social and the environmental issues at heart because they live there, because it has an impact on their communities. They recently received, this is their office in Seattle, Washington. It's actually recently received the Living Building Pedal certification. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but it's extremely stringent certification process. But they were able to receive a pedal for place, health and happiness, materials, equity, and beauty. And they were able to preserve the historical aspects of this warehouse in their hometown. This is BNIM. They're located in Kansas City, Missouri, and their whole mantra is no one knows as much as everyone. And it was a thing that I heard constantly throughout the day. No matter from the intern to the principal, everybody knew this mantra, and they used it and applied it in every single aspect of their design, in terms of how their organization functioned, everything. No one knows as much as everyone. And I really appreciated the humility that they brought to their design. They are a fully integrated design firm. They have like dedicated landscape architects. They have dedicated interior designers. They have information technology and information systems people that are working, that are actually contributing to the design themselves. This is EHDD in San Francisco. And so what I found most useful from my experience there was how they approached sustainability. They didn't like to sort of overuse the word in itself, but really trying to find ways to make sustainability fit their clients' needs. So if it was a building that was, an educational facility like a elementary school or something, they tried to use the building as an educational tool for their, for the students there. So they used that in sort of like a soft way to slip in the sustainability. Or if it was, they just really try to tailor everything towards the client's need. Sorry. So again, talking about, here we go, EHDD, one of the things that I thought was really great, one of the questions that we asked in the process of developing this report was, how do you measure the success of a design? And the best response by far of the 86 people that I interviewed throughout this whole process was at EHDD, and one of their project managers who said, whether or not the facilities guy is happy to see me. And at first I couldn't quite understand what she meant. And she says, if the building, because sustainability, there seems to be this misperception that sustainability means, high technology associated with the high performance. Sometimes, buildings can be incredibly complicated to operate. So if the building is so complicated that the facilities manager can't operate it or maintain it or understand it, then we've failed as designers. So she knows when she's going on, after construction to walk through in the building, if the facilities guy is happy to see her, that's her measure of success, which I thought was pretty clever. This is Brooks Scarpa. They are the smallest firm that I visited. I could give a presentation on Brooks Scarpa alone. They are a 7-person firm. So they are the smallest. And so to me, it's a testament that you don't have to be a large firm to achieve sustainable design. They have 5 COTE wins. And so you go in thinking it's this huge machine and all these analysts, and it's 7 people that, hit the floor every day with the dedication and passion for sustainability that is so inspiring. And this is Angela Brooks. I would say, in talking to her, one of the things that resonated with me as a future designer would be the advocacy. She really takes her responsibility as a designer and understands how her designs impact communities. So she is out there like daily advocating, whether it's with local city or state organizations, to try to push the limits of sustainability. A lot of the times the things that she's trying to integrate into her designs haven't been approved yet necessarily, or maybe it's not written in the code. So she doesn't just take the no. She's pushing the boundaries every day. And I think she has built up enough credibility at this point to be able to make those changes, and people listen to her because she has proven success. She's done an amazing job in Los Angeles. This is Mithun. They are in Seattle, Washington. This is actually a collaboration between Mithun and BNIM, who is in Kansas City. So a lot of these firms know each other and they work together, they collaborate together. Go figure. Big firms that are doing great things together. So they're one of the larger firms. They have 5 COTE wins, and they began their first LEED Gold project in 1998. And they said at the time, you know, there really wasn't a big interest in sustainability, and people were still trying to understand. I think even now people are still trying to understand what sustainability means. So for them, you know, they said they understood that everyone had to have a sort of base competency in, you know, understanding passive and active systems. So they required that all of their people have LEED accreditation. That was a big push from the leadership in trying to elevate the firm. And this is their office there in Seattle, Washington. So they're really interesting because they in the old days, they used to have something called the model shop, similar to what we have here at Overland. And that's where they started all of their new hires and their interns at Mithun. But as time sort of passed, they realized that, you know, everything was moving towards technology, and they said, you know, how can we ensure that everyone here has a really, you know, a good stronghold in building simulation? So they decided that they rebranded their lab, and it's now called the CoLab. And they basically, what they did is they have new hires and interns and recent graduates that come through the CoLab, and they have to go through 6 months of like building simulation, and they do feasibility studies, conceptual designs, and they spend all that time doing what is known otherwise as front end work, because they don't want their people to be bogged down with building code and, you know, regulations. So rather than doing that, they make sure that everybody that starts in the firm, that they know definitively that those people have those skill sets. So everyone starts in the CoLab there. This is Kieran Timberlake in Philadelphia, and to me, just mind-blowing the dedication and resources that they have available at that firm, to be honest. They to me are in essence like a living laboratory. They use every resource they have in-house to push design, to push the limits of design. And this right here is a picture of so it's a 2-story warehouse. I'm trying to remember, something like 40,000 square feet. It's a huge facility. It's an old historic warehouse. But these 2 people that are here, they're on the base. The entire base floor is either like art display for their facades, or they're actually doing dedicated research, which is what they're doing here. So what they will do is they will actually build wall assemblies there, like from start to finish, and they'll build facades or, you know, different shading devices for their designs, and they're able to test them to see what the performance actually is. That way, at the end of the day, when they turn the projects over to the contractors and they say, this project should take this much time and should cost this much money, and we know because we built it. That's Kieran Timberlake. And they also, I mean, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Tally, which is an embedded carbon software. No? None of you? Y'all should Google it because you need to know. But they created Tally. So they are super heavily invested into the research, like legitimate scientific, you know, academic, peer-reviewed research. They are in it. And this is Siegel and Strain. They are a 4-time COTE winner, fantastic firm. They're a very small firm, which means that every single person that is there has to be multifaceted and be able to multitask. They sort of chuckle at the idea of having a sustainability director or a sustainability coordinator. That, when asked that, their first response, well, everybody here is the sustainability director. Everybody here has those strengths. And this is Larry Siegel over at Siegel and Strain. And at Siegel and Strain, their sort of big push is for embodied carbon, which I'm not too sure how many of you actually know or are familiar with that. It's sort of stepping outside of just the energy metrics of a building, like how much energy a building uses, but it's a more stringent way of for you to be able to assess a building or a product or something. You look at the carbon emissions that are released in the creation of the materials that you're using. You look at the carbon emissions that are wasted in the transportation of those materials. You're looking at the carbon emissions that are released in the actual assembly and construction of the building, in addition to looking at the carbon emissions that are produced from the building in the operation of the building, all the way to the end of looking at the carbon emissions of deconstructing the building and demolishing it. It is so there are, I'm trying to remember, something like 22 people at the firm, and they're calculating these things because to them, they say it's short-sighted. We're so far behind in climate change right now that if we don't start projecting out and looking at the sort of collective cost of creating buildings, then we're all going to die. Anyways, it's fascinating. Well, I mean, that's just basically it, right? So those are my words, by the way. You can quote me on that, not them. And this is Sarah. Sarah is located in Portland, Oregon. They have 3 top 10 wins, but in my opinion, probably the best representative of what sustainability, like sort of as a collective, because if you're looking at not just the building design, but you're looking at the overall processes, they really take to heart how they live and operate in their day-to-day lives, like to an extreme. They have cloth napkins and paper. They don't use paper plates. They don't use styrofoam. They demand that all their caterers bring in, locally sourced organic food. They're just truly fascinating. So they really sort of, they said it had to take a deep look at themselves in the mirror before they start sort of preaching to their clients about how their clients should live and operate within their buildings. And so again, they approach sustainability through the natural step, which if you're not familiar with that framework, I highly recommend that you look at the natural step. It's something that's outside of the scope of architecture, but it's hugely impactful on your organization. So look up the natural step. So at Sarah, they made sure that every single one of their leaders received the natural step training in order to be able to implement that within the firm. So all in all, I visited 10 firms in 7 cities in 21 days, which was pretty aggressive. This is sort of, and this is really brief for the sake of this presentation, my sort of general summary of the report is that at high performance firms, they tend to have more women in their firms. You can interpret that how you like. I'm not saying that there's any causation there or anything, but they also have more women in leadership positions, which I found very interesting. And these are all paired towards the AIA national statistics. They have a higher percentage of LEED accredited people than the national average. And they have a lower turnover. When people come to these firms, they stay at these firms. Sorry, let me go back. I tapped the monitor. And, another sort of, not revelation, but the 83% of the interns that I surveyed felt that their design ideas were welcome. So these firms are not sort of top-down management. Everybody sitting at the table has a responsibility to contribute to the designs. So they're hugely supportive of their people, no matter what position they are in within the firm. So these are my sort of collective top 10 lessons, from the high performance firms. So they raise the bar. That's number one. By virtually every measure, they're not looking to win awards. They're not chasing, certifications. They're pushing the limits of design and performance every single day because they are so passionate and so committed to sustainability. They are deeply committed, right? So from the principal to the intern, there really is a deep understanding that sustainability is not like an add-on. It's in their DNA. I wish I could have put the clips of the people saying, it's in our DNA, it's who we are, it's how we live, it's the right thing to do, we believe in it. Like that's across every single firm, every single person, from the principal to the intern, everywhere that I interviewed, everyone said the same thing, it's who we are. Number 3, they live sustainability. So whether it's them riding a bike or taking a bus or could be planting a tree, right? It's sort of reflective of the mindfulness that people at high performance firms have. That you can't just make these beautiful creations and then not live the same way too. So they integrate these sustainability strategies in their own homes and in their lives. Number 4, they work with the best. So if they understand their limitations. If they don't know something, they will find out who does know the answer to that. So they have no problem reaching out to people who legitimately belong to that profession. So if it's bringing in, industrial hygienists or electrical engineers or mechanical engineers, they know their limitations as designers and they seek the help when they need it, which seems like a easy thing, but is apparently more difficult in reality. They hire the best. That's number 5. Surprisingly enough, one of the questions that we brought up where we were trying to see if there was some sort of Briggs-Myers test or what personality tests were they using in order to recruit like the best designers from across the world. But just in me talking to the new hires, a lot of these amazing, brilliant, inspiring people found these firms through the COTE Awards. It's like you stop to think about the impact that COTE Awards have had for students in undergraduate and graduate school. When they come out, they've been studying these designs in school. They've heard the names of these firms. And so when they into the profession, they want to find people that are the same sort of like-minded people. And so it seems like that was a big commonality for a lot of these firms. They invest in their people. It's not just about, wall details all day long. They understand that they have to invest in their people in order for their people to grow. So whether it's lunch and learns or maybe they have tips and tricks, things of that sort, that they want to be able to invest in their people. A lot of these firms will pay for certifications, will pay for study guides, things of that sort. Sorry. Oops. They are not afraid of the unknown. So again, because they are risk takers, there is a certain financial risk that's associated with a lot of these designs and technologies or strategies that haven't been implemented before, but they understand that if they're going to progress and create better, more efficient buildings, that they can't be afraid of the unknown. They have to sort of embrace it and run with it in order to improve as a firm. Number 8, they recognize that great ideas can come from anywhere. Again, it goes back to kind of like the BNIM mantra of that no one knows as much as everyone. And 83% of the intern survey that felt that their design ideas were being welcomed. Number 9, they are forward-thinking. So it's not just about the building code now. It's not about like what the city says they should do or what federal regulations say they should do or what AIA 2030 says that they should do. They're trying to project further and push that envelope every single day. And number 10, they give back. So that it's not just enough to make these beautiful buildings, that they don't live in a bubble, that they have to be involved in their local communities and the local culture and embrace all those things in or to truly elevate their designs and just be good humanitarians. So these are the top 10 lessons for any firm. So this is specifically, we wrote this to try to say, okay, well, it's great studying all these amazing, wonderful firms, but if you're a new, architect fresh out of school, or, just recently licensed and you wanted to open up your own firm, what are the things that you could do, that you could take away from this report, from the lessons of these high performance firms? And number one is expand your view of sustainability. I'm amazed how many people don't really truly understand what that means. And so unless you truly understand what that means, you can't really jump into it. So there's social, economic, and environmental impact. Reframe your organization, reframe your firm through that lens, and really try to say, okay, how can we approach sustainability within our firm? Is it through recycling? Is it through conserving energy, minimizing material waste, those kinds of things, minimizing vehicular traffic, those kinds of things? Really try to expand your view of sustainability outside of a design. Number two, create a vision. So you need to know what you stand for, right, in order to be able to communicate it with your audience. And so you need to create a mission statement with your definition of sustainability, not Merriam-Webster's dictionary of sustainability, right? You want to be able to make it your own. And the suggestion from across the board was find frameworks that mean something to you, whether it's LEED or Living Building Challenge, or it could be the Natural Step, it could be the 2030 Challenge, and pick and pull elements from those frameworks and make them your own. That will help sort of keep you on track and sort of tie back into what you feel your mission should be. Number three is rethink your process. So clarify your goals before making any decisions at all as to what it is, whether it's the clients that you want to approach or how you're going to approach your design. You need to look back at step back and really examine how you go about your design process. And then going back to Lake Plato, sort of looking at are we bringing in the right people at the right time to help us make the decisions, or is it something that we're doing at the end? So really try to rethink your process. Number four, collaborate, right? Work with people outside of architecture. Really try to reach into the other, there are dedicated disciplines of people who are all trying to achieve similar goals. So collaborate with these people, get outside of AIA, outside of your box, and really try to learn things from other industries. Number five is build diversity. Was also one of the things that diversity, whether it's in gender or diversity in terms of ethnicity, diversity in terms of academic background. So you want to bring people, again, that don't think like you. So that, because everyone has a unique perspective, everyone has different experiences in their life, and that all gets manifested in our designs, whether we want to admit it or not. Number six, nurture your people. If you're not growing, you're dying. And if you're not contributing to your people and you're not, helping them advance in their own, whether it's personal or professional lives, then you're failing. So if you're really going to take sustainability to heart, you need to be able to nurture your people. Number seven, maintain relationships with past clients. This was a big takeaway for me. A lot of the advances that these firms spoke of came from their discussions with old clients, when they just pick up the phone and call the client and say, hey, how's the building operating? EHDD is a great example. They talked about there were solar panels on one of their designs, and for some reason they couldn't figure out why they weren't achieving the same efficiency, and something was going wrong with the solar panels and it wasn't as efficient. Maybe the building design was failing, maybe it was the envelope. So it ended up being that there were seagulls that were contributing to to the solar panels what's the word I'm looking for? Not demise, but they weren't working as efficiently. And so it was something as simple as going in and cleaning the solar panels, but how they had to go back and sort of retrofit it to be able to create these screens to protect the solar panels so that they could work as efficiently as they were intended. And they would have never known that had they not just picked up the phone. You know, where is that in the billable hours? It doesn't take much time to pick up the phone and call your client, so do it. Let's see, number 8, walk the talk. Not enough for you to, preach sustainability. You have to be able to live it and find ways within your own life to implement environmentally friendly approaches within your life. And number 9, get involved. So seek outside organizations, find out what your people like, find out what motivates them, what they're passionate about, and help support those things. And number 10, stay curious, because I think that was the sort of, many of these people were principals that have been doing this for 30 years, and they'll be the first to tell you that, once you have it in your mind that you know everything, you know nothing, because you've already locked yourself out. So in order to truly propel yourself in advance, you have to stay open and flexible and curious. So that's the conclusion of my report. If you want to know more about this particular report, you can look it up online. Again, it's called the Habits of High Performance Firms. I'd give you the link, but it's too long for you to copy down probably. But the full PDF is accessible online, and that will give you more information specifically about the demographics, the design processes, the hiring practices. If you want to know what software these firms are using, you can find all that information there. And that's it. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? No? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, so you went and interviewed, but you did not do any kind of paper or
Yes.
online assessment, or you did?
Yes, we did. We did both.
You did that in advance, and then you went and interviewed, or how did you
Both. Yeah, well, so inevitably, we did their sort of first push. We did send paper surveys, and then I went and did interviews, face-to-face interviews with, like I said, it was a total of 86 people across the 10 firms. And it was important to us that we spoke to somebody at every single level of the firm. And, because we didn't want to hear the sort of, not ARCA speak, but we didn't want to hear it all coming down from the principals. We wanted to talk to everybody in the firm to see if the message was the same. Are they all saying the same things? And after that, we went through the data, and then we found that there were still some questions that came out. And so all of the firms were very open and very flexible, and we did do some follow-up PDF surveys. The follow-up surveys that came through were focused mostly on metrics. So it was looking at post-occupancy evaluations, things that needed some clarification, probably about a good 15 questions that came from that. And so that was all sort of compiled within the report there. But yeah, that's it. Any other questions? Yeah, sure. Yeah, post-occupancy evaluation is hugely, it's huge at all of these firms. The problem is with post-occupancy evaluations is that they are time-consuming and they cost a lot of money, right, in general. And post-occupancy evaluations can be like a really broad term even within itself. Some people focus solely on the metrics. Some people focus on the metrics, the performance of the building, and also the behavior of these buildings. But it was a huge part of what made these firms successful. Even if it was just tracking the data, trying to think off the top of my head. Well, I can't say the name of the firm, but there is one firm in particular that went back to their clients, and it was a multifamily housing that was being paid for, the maintenance was being paid for by the city. And so in order to drop the operating costs, they said, how can we get access to the data to find out how much energy was being consumed in all of these in these units, which is the biggest challenge of a post-occupancy evaluation, is getting access to the data, right? So what they did is they actually had their client integrate, it's just a checkbox on a lease. that says, like, when the people were coming in, the tenants were coming in to sign their lease, it says, I so and so allow, you know, this firm to have access to my data. And with just the checkbox and the rest of the signature, they were able to get all of the data for those buildings. Some of these firms that I went to, because they couldn't invest in a full comprehensive post-occupancy evaluation, they had their actual login, username, password for a lot of these buildings to be able to go back and evaluate it. Seattle, I'm trying to think what else. Seattle and Washington, the state, I believe Portland as well, requires that any publicly funded building release their energy data. Any publicly funded building, so the courthouse, right, like whatever, DMV, they have to provide, it's public record, their data consumption. And so they're able to go back in and look to see, are these buildings performing as efficiently as possible, and what can we do to fix them? So it was a huge tool for them to be able to not only advance their designs, but they were able to go back and retrofit a lot of these things for their old clients to make them more energy efficient and in the end save money, you know. But it was a hugely important aspect of their process. Anyway, any other questions? Yes. Yeah, you know, they included that was one of the things. I personally did not hear those discussions, but I know that I put the new sort of parameters there: community, ecology, water economy, energy, wellness, and resilience. I think it's because it's not that they're trying to make it more difficult. To be honest with you, a lot of the people that I interviewed at these firms were the original creators of COTE. Like, I spoke with I was in the original committee when I remember sitting at a table and discussing, we should do this thing. And they were all really not disappointed, but kind of sad that we still even have COTE awards, because they thought that this would just become sort of an industry standard, that we wouldn't be having these discussions anymore. That sustainability would just be integrated into every single design, that sort of social conscience would have been elevated by now, but it hasn't. So in order to try to push, again, COTE sees sort of their responsibility to sort of push that. They have made the requirements, I wouldn't say more stringent, but I think they're also looking at where they fare in the context of Living Building Challenge or looking at LEED. And so just having done this for several years, there's sort of like a facelift to the framework in itself to try to say, are we demanding enough? Are we asking enough? Because again, a lot of people, defer to COTE, and a lot of future designers and students look to COTE for this sort of standard. So that's why they keep pushing it. Have you had I don't know if many of y'all have had a chance to look at the new COTE standards, but they are more intense. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea that we would, of course, all want to design sustainability, sustainably. But we have an issue, and I'm wondering if they've given any tips, tricks, and helps on how to educate the clients to be willing to go that extra mile.
Well, that's the thing. I mentioned EHDD. It's not an extra mile. It's in how you present it. It's really my opinion, and this is just in my discussion with everybody that I talk to. It happens at that first sit-down meeting. Whoever you have sitting at that table with that client has to be able to integrate sustainability in a way. A lot of people don't even use the word sustainability because there is a sort of it is kind of like a F word, you know what I mean? Like sustainability. Don't want to say that because it gets people really hot. So they'll find different ways to approach it. Like I said, if it's a school, they'll say, what is it that you're wanting from this building outside of the building? And you have to sort of raise those questions. Like, you want to use this as a tool to educate the children about energy and, about, how we live our lives, or about the trees and the environment. And they find ways for every single sort of sector, the major sectors, and that just comes with the experience and seeing the benefits. And they find ways to integrate that in there. It's not an add-on. Like, there are some of the firms that have a dedicated line item in the initial phase that for what they call eco charrette. So it's just like a given. It's in their contracts. And they have the hard-earned luxury of having a good reputation in sustainable design. So people are coming to them because they want that, right? But even if you say, well, I don't want all that sustainability stuff, it is not an add-on. And if you approach it like it is, then it's going to be, your client will see it in the same way. So you really need to reframe how you think, and how you're not you personally, but like how you think and how you're approaching it in your communication with your clients. And, because again, a lot of these projects that I went to go see and I did a lot of site visits on these places, were low-income family housing. They had very, very strict budgets, and not only strict budgets, but the California standards are extremely stringent. So they have to add, it's not like, they have it easy, but they find ways to integrate it into every single thing that they do, and they find that angle, because you got to change your mentality or it will never happen, So you just find it could be anything. Some people say, oh, equity, or we're about wellness, or it's about health, because there's so many different components to sustainability. Find something that you think will be of value to them within that, and frame your design around that, if that helps. Anyway. Yeah, and think about some of them. It was just as simple as like the bottom line. If they own the building, you have to say, like, think of all the money over the lifetime, and it could just be as simple as like a Excel spreadsheet saying, look how much money we're going to save you over the life of this building. Think about how much better your people. It could be, you look at productivity levels, and there's research. You have a ton of research out there, resources where you can show, whatever, increased daylight and how that affects performance in the building. And, there's just, find your angle, come prepared and come already with those sustainability ideas in mind, but maybe change the verbiage a little bit. So anyways, any other questions? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.